Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the nonprofit, no, sorry, the Senior Healthcare Mastermind. And I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful chairperson, Connie, to take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Happy September 1st. Welcome to the Rockville Chamber of Commerce Senior Healthcare Mastermind. We are continuing our series with the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm just so blessed, and we're so honored to have Sheila Griffith join us again. We are almost finished, just one more after today, with our sixth series from the Alzheimer's Association. The education that we've been getting is phenomenal. Today, we are going to be talking about Dementia Conversations, doctor visits, driving, legal, and financial. These are hard conversations to have in our business. So many of our clients are still driving because the children are not able to have that conversation. So luckily, Sheila Griffith is here to tell us. To share with us how we can have that conversation with our loved ones. All right, take it away, Sheila.
Thank you so much, Connie. And I hope that, that driving one is probably the hardest one out of, we're going to talk about 3 today, but that's probably the hardest one. But thank you, everyone. If I haven't met you before, as Connie said, and Margie, that my name is Sheila Griffith. I work for the Alzheimer's Association, and I don't have a volunteer with me today. Usually I have my trusty volunteer, but it's just me today. So I think we can have a very productive presentation, and as always, hopefully a really robust question and answer, to round out the hour. So thank you so much for having me, and it's just great this is a great group, and enjoying my time. I can't believe it's been that many programs so far. So I'm enjoying it, and just let's keep it going. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and load the program. All right. So our program is called Dementia Conversations. I'm going to just fix my screen a little bit there. Okay, so there are actually 3 topics we're going to talk about. As we said, driving is probably the first one and the biggest one, but also doctor visits. I bet there's a lot of people, especially spouses of people with Alzheimer's disease or professional caregivers. It's hard to get somebody to go to the doctor, get ready to go to the doctor. And last is legal and financial planning. So that's a big one. We always try to get in there somewhere that we need to really think about that. So and really covering future care needs is another difficult conversation, but one that's very necessary. So hopefully today, a lot of these conversations breaking the ice. And having, how do you do that as the spouse, or, as a caregiver? How do you break that ice? How do you find the right time to do it? We'll help you think about that, and have some tips on how to do that, help you plan ahead, and really build a care team to help you, and give you the opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with similar issues. As all of our videos or all of our PowerPoint presentations so far, they have embedded videos in them, and this program especially has some great videos from real people who have battled these difficult conversations and these situations. And so it's always great to hear from them, and what's worked and what hasn't. And as always, we connect you with resources through the Alzheimer's Association, and I bet elsewhere too. through our conversation here today. So literally, you know, you'll have somebody, a loved one, or maybe it's somebody, if you're a professional caregiver, you're finding that they've always been independent, the person with the diagnosis, and they might become offended. And so here's all the text messages that might be happening. My sister lives close by, she can help, but our loved one's been independent and could be offended. We've just started noticing some changes, don't know if there's a problem. Our loved one says, you know, I'm fine, don't worry about me, you're busy with your own lives, wait till you're my age. Things are a little harder than they used to be. So it's not me, it's just life in general. So we know if you've had somebody with this diagnosis and you've tried to do any of these things like stop driving or go to the doctor or have any kind of legal or financial conversation, you probably get those excuses. So here's the best tips for successful conversations in general is sooner is better than later. Don't wait for the crisis. Sometimes we say that, wait till it's broke. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. Nope, not in this case with somebody with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. Have these conversations now while the person can have them. Develop a plan using finesse, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the details of these conversations. Take notes about the changes you see. Always a good idea. I always tell caregivers that I speak with that do care consultations and any kind of conversation is make sure you're taking notes about this. It's very difficult to say when you thought that memory problem really became worse. Was it you know, last June, or was it March, or you know, when was it? So take some notes so you're very sure. Here's a fun one. Practice your conversation in advance. And I think this is a really great idea, believe it or not, to just thinking about you know, your loved one or the person you need to talk to and how to best approach them and what are the right words to use with them and what are the wrong words to really avoid when you're having the conversation. And then always talk when you're both relaxed and comfortable. So let's use all these in some of our difficult conversations. So the first one, as I said, is going to the doctor. This could, oh, I think I said driving was first. The first one's going to the doctor. So if you haven't had this experience with a loved one before or anybody with this disease, you know, going to the doctor really inspires fear in some people. Some people anger, just don't want to do it, don't want to have to ruin my day by going to see that, you know, terrible doctor. And that there's a stigma, you know, I don't want to get any more bad news about this diagnosis. I already got the diagnosis. I don't want to hear anything more about it. And the fear could be, I don't want to hear more of what's wrong with me. But it can be a barrier to really good health care for your loved one. You know, getting a diagnosis, we're going to hear in a video that getting the diagnosis is very important, and getting it sooner rather than later is very beneficial. And we want to have the person feel comfortable going to the doctor for checkups and all the medical help that we may or may not need in the future with this diagnosis. So we really need to take care of those three things: the fear, the anger, and the stigma. So as I said, here's a great video from Donna talking about the importance of getting help and a diagnosis. Can I ask, can you guys hear the video? I forgot to check to see if there was video sound.
No. I'll make sure
That's it. Yeah, I didn't share my sound. I'm sorry about that. Let me try to play. I'll play that again.
I think you have to be honest.
There we go.
I think you have to be honest. I think that's the important thing with to get a loved one to the doctor. I think you just need to be candid and honest of what are you trying to do. We're trying to understand what we're up against. It's just so important to do that, because you can't battle something that you don't know what you're battling. Again, it may not have been Alzheimer's. It could have been depression. It could have been so many other things. And guess what? There's other things you can do to take care of those issues as well. But that's what you need to be able to do. You know, you can't ignore something. It's not going to go away.
So I think Donna said it well, getting to the doctor, getting to the doctor and finding out, what are we battling? What is really happening here? Let's get this diagnosis, let's put a name on it, and then making sure that, you know, from there on out, that is going to help you, rather than operating in the dark, get that diagnosis. So here are some tips to help with the conversation. We know something's wrong with our loved one, or we know something, you know, that we have this doctor's appointment and we need to get there. It's probably important. Let's use words that are most comfortable for the person. So if it's whatever type of vocabulary our loved one has, and making them most comfortable. A lot of times just having a soothing tone and maybe talking about it ahead of time, planning it ahead of time. Sometimes that can be worrisome for people, but a lot of times when you just spring it on somebody quickly, that can also be a problem. So make sure that you're doing it in a way that's most comfortable for the person. Here's a great one if people don't know about this, that there's an annual wellness visit that we can all, if you're Medicare eligible, can all take advantage of, and it's free. So sometimes just telling somebody something's for free can really, you know, spark an interest and make it more of a happier experience. We're taking advantage of this. Isn't this a great idea? Hey, this thing is free. And sometimes if you're both Medicare eligible and you're trying to get you're a caregiver trying to get someone, a loved one, to the doctor, talk about you going for yours also. So let's both take advantage of this great opportunity. So really framing it in a very positive way. Here's a great one. I tell this to caregivers all the time when they're running into problems and challenges and barriers with getting someone with this Alzheimer's diagnosis to do anything. Always pair it with an enjoyable outing. So we're already having to go to the doctor's office for this doctor's visit. Let's make a day of it. Let's have lunch afterwards, or let's go for ice cream afterwards, or, you know, even go for drinks afterwards. Who knows? So, but something that the person would like to do that is enjoyable to them, pair it with that maybe not so great doctor's visit. And always invite your family members and maybe close friends to communicate concerns and questions to the doctor, either through you as the caregiver, or, you know, the healthcare advocate, whoever is actually bringing the person to the doctor. Communicate any concerns that you might have noticed. So sort of put that out there to family that, you know, is there anything that you've seen that's happened that I should bring up to the doctor? And if the person is still reluctant to go to the doctor's office and doesn't buy it for a free visit, a wellness visit, or doesn't want to go out for an enjoyable outing, then it might be time for a therapeutic fib. And this is sometimes very difficult for families and caregivers to accept, but there are times when we need to get to the doctor. You know, we need medical care for whatever reason, whether it's the diagnosis initially, or it's follow-up care, or if it's about, you know, not even about the Alzheimer's, maybe it's about another condition like diabetes, or, you know, some condition that needs medical care. So trying a therapeutic fib, something like, well, you know, the doctor's office is really requiring that we come in, and the insurance company is requiring that we go in to see the doctor, or they won't refill our prescription. And sort of blame it on another person. And it's not true that the insurance company is requiring this, but blaming it on them, and then having the person hopefully, you know, buy that, you know, fib, you know, in that way, can then maybe be the thing that gets them in the car and gets them to see the doctor. So having a therapeutic fib also that works is always a good thing to have in your back pocket. So before we go to driving, just to say, last thing about doctor's visits is that you may find that the person with Alzheimer's disease anyway, kind of, at first they may want to go to the doctor, and then as their memory loss or problems with thinking progresses, you may find that their attitude changes. So always try things that worked in the beginning. It always worked to pair this with an ice cream visit. So, hey, we'll go to the doctor as we usually do, and then we'll get ice cream afterwards. All of a sudden that doesn't work. So make sure you're prepared for that there are times when, the person's disease may progress and you may have to try something else. Like now we have to talk about the therapeutic fib first, or the ice cream doesn't work, or maybe the wellness visit being free didn't work. So now maybe we incorporate ice cream and see if that works. So anyway, doctor's visits are very important. And, I've always seen that it's a very hard thing, and I hope people have success with some of these tips. So another hard one, which is even equally as dangerous, obviously, is when to have the person stop driving. And you're, as the caregiver, have noticed some of these things that you see: accidents, maybe there's been traffic tickets, there's scrapes on the car, on the front bumper, on the sides of the front bumper, problems with parking maybe, and just basically overall mistakes while driving. Maybe you've been in the car with somebody who's driving and has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or dementia, and you've seen that they've actually made mistakes. And so it's worrisome and can be very dangerous, obviously. So how do we have that conversation? Chris's family, his father needed to stop driving, and this is some tips that he has for us.
There's no exact answer on this is when you stop driving. You can tell when coming up to an intersection, as an example, the ability to understand what's going on around you was starting to deteriorate a little bit. Being on the highway with cars on both sides becomes a little bit more difficult. And first and foremost, the safety of everybody in the car, as well as other drivers on the road. You think about that, and you want to make sure you're not putting anybody in danger. But then the difficult part is telling your dad, who you love, and he loves driving, and he's used to it, that he can no longer do that. But then even then, taking the keys away full time was very difficult. The doctor was very helpful in just saying, medically, you can't do this anymore. But my mother had the hardest time with this because she knew how much this was going to hurt him as well. And this is one of the first things that we had to deal with as a family when it came to telling my dad that he had to stop doing something because of this disease. That meant a lot to him.
So the way we talk to someone about this is very, very important. And to when to stop driving is involving them in the conversation. And as the slide says, plan ahead before the accident occurs, before there's a crisis. We don't want to have our loved one hurt or have our loved one hurt someone else while driving. So this is obviously very important, and something that if you're involved in this situation, you need to really give immediate thought to. So planning ahead, however that is for you and your loved one, if it's best to talk about it slowly, mention the topic a few times. I had a care consultation yesterday with a family, a caregiver, and her spouse who has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and he's still driving, and he's in the very early stages. So just mentioning it briefly sort of put it on his radar. Whether or not it's going to be discussed further is we'll wait and see with this family. But anyway, sometimes just knowing that there's dents or dings in the car and talking about it and showing the person who has the diagnosis who's driving that there was, seems to have been something happened with the car. So just starting out slowly may be a good idea depending on the person. But planning ahead, expressing your concerns about the changes you've noticed, if it's things in the car or it's about how the person has, you've observed them driving. This is a big one, appeal to their own sense of responsibility and concerns for others. So I don't think there's anybody who would want to hurt someone else, you know, with their car because of their driving and a problem they have, a diagnosis they have. So try to appeal to that sense of responsibility. That's going to really work with, I think, a lot of people. And you know, it's true. It's something that is not, you know, a therapeutic fib by any means. It's just something that we need to remind our loved one of, that they do have a responsibility to operate their car in a safe manner. Here's a great video, woman named Sheila talking with her father in that way about the responsibility of driving.
Some tips on having the conversation is pointing out, especially for my father, the potential danger to others that it may cause if he's behind the wheel. And, you know, just talking about it from the standpoint that this is not only the best thing for you, but this is also the best thing for others around you. And these are some of the alternatives, making sure that, you know, this is what's going to happen, having a plan. You know, if mom can't take you, then Uncle Thomas or some, you know, will be here to take you, and we will make sure that you're getting out of the house and that you're doing some things. So, you know, presenting the bad news, but then also presenting the plan. And for my father, that's really, really important to have a plan.
So that's a great point and a great order of how you would talk about it. Present the, you know, maybe the not so good news first. Hey, we're going to really have to, you know, have you stop driving now. And then secondly, you know, maybe the more positive part of this conversation, what are the alternate plans for the transportation? So, you know, having the person help you decide what the alternate plans would be. So whether it's a family or friends driving, or Uber or Lyft or something like that. So what are the alternate ways that we can have you still hopefully stay independent as much as possible, but not being the person who's driving a car. And here's a great one, is to incorporate the voice of an esteemed professional and have empathy. So always involving the doctor. So getting them to the doctor's visit and then putting driving on the agenda with the doctor if the person is still driving. And then the doctor hopefully will have a lot to say about, you know, having the person with the diagnosis stop driving. But involving a professional is really a good idea. And having empathy. We have a great video here, which I think really, Wendy really covers that well.
Talking to somebody about stopping driving, I think it's most important to understand that that is tied to someone's independence more than most things. And so by saying you can't do this anymore is like telling the person, it's like ripping away their independence. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. You know, I know that I've always tried to put myself in that situation. What would I think if someone was saying this to me? You don't get to do this anymore. And how would I feel? And how would I want somebody to talk to me about this? And so if you try to I think sometimes too many people try to approach it as, you know, very punitive. And I'm doing what's right for you. So why don't you understand, without really turning the tables and putting themselves in that position, understanding, you know, how helpless that feels to take those things away. It's important to be thoughtful about what that experience is like for the individual.
I think that's a great point, is to trying to not make it punitive. It's going to feel punitive, but how you frame it and how the words you use to try to, and I think we've said this all along in our other programs, and definitely in our program of effective communication last month, is the words you're using and how you're using them, not telling the person you can't drive anymore, but in doing it in a way that, you know, either you lead up to it slowly, or you use the right words to say, you know, we have a responsibility to keep you safe and to keep others on the road safe. However it works for the person with the diagnosis, for your hopefully your loved one, knowing the right words to use can really, and how you frame it, and framing it with empathy in your words, and as well as in your tone of voice, will really go far. So driving, obviously, when to stop driving kind of goes into the legal and financial planning here, and thinking about, making the person safe and making sure that we have all of our legal and financial plans in order. And kind of using driving sometimes as a good way to sort of bunch these things together. We don't want to confuse the person, but to think about there are some important things that we need to sort of get sorted out. And we've got this diagnosis, and it's really devastating. But let's try to keep our ducks in a row and think about all the things we can do to keep you safe and to actually have good quality of life and good plans for the future. So stopping driving is one thing, and then going to legal and financial planning is another. So here's Chris talking about how they dealt with some of the financial problems that an Alzheimer's disease diagnosis comes with.
Financially, this disease will increase the cost of living. It's just a fact. So planning for those extra costs is that much more important than what you were planning for before. And so you have to review everything that's in place, see what changes need to be made, both legally and financially, and you have to monitor that going forward afterwards too.
Very difficult disease. It's very costly for many families to, wrap their heads around and plan for. So in these types of conversations, these are equally, I don't know which one's worse, going to the doctor for some people, having a conversation about stopping driving, or talking about legal and financial planning. You may feel like it's awkward for you. You're reluctant, you're uncomfortable, it feels intrusive. If it's, even if it's your spouse, but if it's not your spouse, suppose it's your, parent, or, somebody that you're trying to help legally, or, as a healthcare power of attorney or financial power of attorney, it can feel intrusive to you and to the person you're trying to help. And maybe they might even feel you're being disrespectful. So, but it is a necessary thing to talk about. So we have a great video here, Julie, who it doesn't say what her experience was here, but in her advice, she obviously has been through this situation before, and she has some great advice.
Here's what I've come to after all of this. That it's the most loving and kind thing you can do for them is to be honest with them and say, this is like a really scary thing. And I feel a lot of discomfort bringing this up to you, but I tell them, if you're going to be the one who's going to take them on this journey, then you have to tell them, I'm going to be here on this journey with you. And there are things that we have to do to get this in place. We're going to go on this journey together. I've told you I'm going to be here with you till the end. So let's get this ready. It's like we're going to go on an ocean ship. We've got to get things packed up. We've got to figure out what we're taking with us. We got to get ready. And the things that we have to get ready, we have to make sure that we know which doctors you're going to be using. I need to get this signed, okay? So that if you go in there and they have to do surgery, for example, I got to have this durable power of attorney for healthcare for you. I have to have this worked out, okay? Now, if for some reason, okay, you need to go to rehab after something, I have to have these documents here, the financial stuff, so I can get these things taken care of for you while this is going on. I don't want to have anything get in the way of us being able to progress and keep doing this. I said, it seems hard because it's hard in our heads. Everybody's read about people who've stolen from elderly people, who've done these horrible things. But if you're the person who's approaching this with loving kindness and compassion, and you're willing to take this person on this journey, you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing the right thing by talking to them about it. And you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you. We're going to do this together. and I'm going to help you through this. And these are the tools that I need to make sure that we can do this.
So I think she really really shows how to get through that type of conversation with a lot of empathy and love, if this is a loved one of yours. So but it's not an easy conversation. And the legal planning, as you know, I'm sure many of you know, if you don't have the legal planning done, and then the financial planning doesn't work without the legal planning, it will cost a lot more later on than it will when the person is competent and able to have this conversation early on. So sometimes the hurdle is just the attitude to having the conversation and then getting the work done. But I think that video really said it all well, to begin by explaining that you're in this together. It may the diagnosis itself feels hopeless and the person might feel helpless, but and then sometimes any kind of legal and financial planning can be really daunting to many people. And so knowing that somebody's in it with them can probably really help a lot. And start by asking questions and gathering documents. If you have anyone who has elderly parents or people that they're responsible for, you know that it doesn't matter if they have an Alzheimer's diagnosis or not, you need to start asking questions and gathering documents now rather than later, to make sure you know where everything is if you're their responsible party. And if somebody's reluctant, try explaining that these are standard plans. They're not something that is just happening to them, only here, that this is a standard plan that we all need to do as we get older. And hopefully, they knew that before the diagnosis, that this is something I think we all know, that we have to have a financial plan in place for our retirement, as well as for any kind of medical care that we need too. So hopefully we all know this, but it doesn't hurt at all to explain that pretty fully. Break the conversation into parts and try different times and locations. I think this is really good advice. I had a friend who was trying to move her parents into assisted living and to a community, and just selling their house out of state and trying to pack up and trying to think about where they were going to go. And, it was just too much. It was just too big of a conversation, too much to have all on the plate at once. And so she was very wise, to my friend, to go ahead and just break it into small pieces and, have the conversations. She was visiting for a week and she broke them up into 3 pieces and, talked about what the plan could be, and then incorporated their wishes in that, but over a span of days instead of just, minutes, can really help somebody. They might even dread it even more, by breaking it up like that, but trying to find a way that is good for the person who you're having the conversation with, as well as yourself, as how it can be most effective and how much they can absorb in one sitting. Think about it. And always involve others as needed. If you have, other family members that you can involve, sometimes when you hit a brick wall, maybe the other person might have a good way to, continue chipping away at the ice, or maybe they're, have a better sense of humor or something that can help your loved one, smooth over those rough edges in this conversation, because there probably will be rough edges in this conversation. So one of the things to keep in mind, and we talk about this in some of our other our other programs, is that there's a care team involved here, believe it or not. And some people don't really realize this until you put a graphic up like this. So the care team is you, the person with the diagnosis, you as a caregiver or spouse or family member. So the family as a whole, it's not just one person. Hopefully it's the family as a whole, more than one person, multiple people. Hopefully the medical team is part of the care team. So that's surrounding the family there, and using your doctor as someone who can give good advice, and also can be the bad guy if that needs to be. but overall giving good advice and being a good leader in this diagnosis and in this process. Involving peers. So peers can be friends, could be neighbors. A lot of people will involve their neighbors, especially with this diagnosis, letting people know about the diagnosis in case something goes wrong, or maybe they spot something that, you know, family members don't see because they're not there every day, but neighbors can be very observant. So using them as part of the care team. Sometimes the workplace, sometimes somebody with an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis is still working. They're young enough to still be working. So involving the workplace and the HR department as part of the care team makes a lot of sense. Trying to make decisions about taking a leave of absence or being on disability, or what are the benefits, you know, to this, what are the drawbacks. So using the workplace is very important if the person's still working. But those community resources, that's where the Alzheimer's Association comes in. We can help you figure out what are the resources I can use in my county here in Montgomery County. I know I've said it before. We've got a lot of great resources here. We're very lucky. And Maryland in general does as well, and DC. So just identifying what are those resources that we can use. So that segues to my last slide to just talk about all the ways the Alzheimer's Association can be there for you. So anything, a question you might have, or if you're somebody who likes to do research and get on the website, our website, as you know, probably is alz.org, and there's quite a lot that you can find there, from the Alzheimer's Navigator, Community Resource Finder, ALZ Connected, and the various other caregiver centers can really be helpful in planning out whatever you're going through. But if it's a crisis, or if it's even, it doesn't have to be a crisis. It could be just a question that's been nagging at you that you wanted to ask somebody about your loved one or about the diagnosis. You can call our helpline, 800-272-3900. And that's 24/7 and always available to take on, as I said, the crisis, or just a question that you needed answering. The people who answer the phone are available. There are social workers that are available to really answer any question possible about the disease. And if they can't answer it, they will get back to you. And we have many different languages. I think it's something like 200 different languages that we can send you resources in. So it can be very comprehensive, and it can help a lot in the crisis situation. And sometimes there are answers that they don't have on this 800 number. And so if they, find that you're in Montgomery County, Maryland, they will actually send you to me. So then I will be a contact locally for you. So there are obviously a lot of support groups, education programs, and free online training that we do on our website that we hope you'll take advantage of, looking at. So that's our program for today, Dementia Conversations. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. Okay. So I wonder if we had any questions or anything from our discussion today. Or maybe you can give me some good tips on what's worked for you in any of these different situations.
Well, thank you, Sheila.
Well, as always, you provide so much great information. I love the
Thank you.
process that you have. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think it's always that being really present part that
Yep.
seems to make the most difference. That's what just keeps coming back to me over and over and over. And not everybody can do that. Some people just get too wrapped into the nonsense of trying to prove themselves about their own ego. And it's like, no, just back off. This is la la land now.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you for saying so. It depends on the person. I was going to say too, we didn't say it in this program as much, but I think it's always good to use humor, especially if the person who your loved one or whoever you're trying to convince to go to the doctor, if that's appropriate. So I'm lucky. I have my mother and my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and they're all got good sense of humor still. They have different diagnoses and different things going on, but they are all still driving, believe it or not. And so they're all in their 80s. And so, sometimes I just joke with my mom and say, I'm driving with her, and I say, I'm giving you a driving test right now. And I actually really am, because I'm watching how she negotiates the parking lots, and where is she driving to? Why is she always going there? What's happening? Let's try to cut down on trips, or things like that. So there's a lot to be said about using humor appropriately with the person, if that's how they like to get information, is in a less heavy way and a more lighthearted way. Anybody else have anything that works with their parents or their grandparents or loved ones?
Music, that singing it like, oh, we're gonna do the dishes now, or whatever. And even just having the right kind of music on for soothing times. And now with Alexa, man, hey Alexa, play James Taylor, and boom, you got an hour of James Taylor ahead of you, or play classical or whatever. I mean, so that's very helpful.
You made me just think of something, Patricia. I'm glad you said that. How about, so I don't want to go to the doctor. You've convinced me. You've got me in the car. Well, put on my music, like get me excited, not, excited to go to the doctor, but either soothe me or, just give me the right music at the right time.
Or why even bother saying it's going to the doctor? Hey, we're going to sit in the car and listen to your favorite tunes, and I'm going to drive. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like, we're so geared towards getting the project done. And it's like, somebody with Alzheimer's, they don't know about the project anymore. It matters not. Connie knows.
Yep.
It's so sad.
It
But
is.
you have to be so creative. Stand-up comedians, improv.
And that's exactly it. I think I try to tell caregivers that all the time, that there comes a point where it's, like the therapeutic fib. It's not a fib anymore. It's just you're trying to get them good care. That's what it is. And hey, if it involves ice cream every time, who cares? Great. Take me with you, that kind of thing. So it's not we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We're trying to have a good day and get done what we have to get done.
Yeah, and I think like what Patricia was saying, where instead of saying, hey, let's go to the doctor, hey, let's go listen to the music in the car. I've done stuff like that where, like when I was working at a long-term care facility, we tried to get people to come to groups, and once they were there, they really enjoyed it, but getting them out of their room into the group sometimes was really difficult. So instead of saying like, hey, we're going to this, it's like, hey, let's go for a walk together. And so you're not even, not that a therapeutic fib is bad, but you're not even having to do that yet, because you're just not giving them all of the details of the process. You're just kind of giving them bit by bit, which sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you can find something, I always found like if there's usually like one or two things that like once you find it with people, it works almost every time, but it takes time to figure out what works for each person. So finding that thing that hooks them is gold.
That's a great point, Megan. Yeah, it's really, and as I said earlier too, hopefully that works the whole time. But sometimes I've seen it where it flip-flops. I'm not going for ice cream. No, it's just a bad day or whatever. And then we have to kind of reassess, I guess, and try to figure out, okay, is it gonna, what will work today? Or, sometimes, I didn't say this earlier, maybe we have to cancel the doctor appointment. It's just not going to work today. And, it's sort of like I remember when my kids were young and taking them food shopping. And I remember one time I didn't even get started, had the kids in the cart, and it just wasn't going. And I just picked the kids up and I said, let's get out of here. And we did something else because it just wasn't, going to work for me and for them. And so it's kind of the same with this disease that, or dementias or, Alzheimer's disease. Some days are better than others. And hopefully that's the day when you got to do the difficult thing and you can get it done pretty well.
Right. Yeah. It's still important to have let them have those moments of autonomy and like, yeah, I really don't want to go to the doctor, and sometimes that's okay if it's not
Yeah.
an emergency, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think a lot of times it can be easy to, well, you have to go, so we're going, and then they lose those little opportunities of autonomy
Independence and
over their
autonomy.
lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great points.
Sheila, this topic is so important. So many times when I'm meeting with families, they just want to reason with mom and dad because they expect mom and dad to be able to understand, comprehend, and then
Mm-hmm.
agree. And they just can't. And it frustrates the children, and it frustrates the mom or dad, and it actually aggravates, agitates, and then makes the situation worse. But they don't want to tell the fib,
Yeah.
and it's so hard to convey to children. You need to enter into mom and dad's reality. But they expect, mom and dad, because they're so strong and the head of the family. How
Yes.
do that's even a difficult conversation for me to have with the children, saying you got to let that go because you're in charge now, and you got to help make the right decision. And they never want to have that conversation about the car, or they'll argue about the car. And the idea about having the doctor tell them that's perfect.
Mm-hmm. And as you probably know, it doesn't, even if the doctor is the one saying it, you're still going to be the one carrying it out. Where's the person's car? Where is their keys?
Yes.
So it's hard. It's, even though, as I said, sometimes you might want to talk about it, slowly in bits and pieces, and do like I do, give a little, road test every time I'm driving with my mother, thinking about it. But, it is still a lengthy process, and you still have a big piece of it. But I've always said, when I have really long conversations about just trying to get somebody to stop driving, try to get it so that it's somebody else, like the doctor. It could also be the MVA. There's a driving test seniors can go to. Now they have to pay for it. So of course they don't want to pay for it, because nobody wants to pay for anything. So how you finesse that is another, question. But and I probably said this before. I have a training that I do with law enforcement too here in Montgomery County every quarter. And one of the things they're instructed to do is, if we're trying to help them understand, what does Alzheimer's look like, and it's different than drunk driving. It's different than driving on drugs. It's different than adult autism. It's different, and how to recognize it. And the thing they know they have to do always is write a citation. Whatever happened, they went through a red light, they had went too slow, went too fast, whatever it was, make sure there's a paper trail, and then start blaming the police. It's all the police's fault, not mine. We have to do this because the police said, you got this ticket for going through a red light, and you were confused, and now we have to go for this driving, senior driving test. And then, when they lose their license, it's kind of trying to make it not so bad, but trying to make it so that it's, not you as a bad guy,
Right.
not the adult child.
And I tell the adult children, if you can get the doctor to recognize or diagnose that mom and dad should not be driving anymore, the doctor can write a letter to the MVA.
Yes.
And then, mom and dad will get the letter from the MVA requesting whatever, or and then it's the outside, not me, your child.
Yep.
It's the outside doing this, because the MVA, they don't want them driving
Of course.
if not able to.
Yeah.
But they don't know unless we inform them. So
Mhm.
great
Oh,
idea.
I had two I had two thoughts. Good morning, everyone, and sorry about the audio issue
Morning,
earlier.
Mark.
I was switching from the car. Good morning. Thank you again, Sheila, for all the good information always. First is, how do you apply if you've had the conversation with your family member when they were fully healthy and fully sound, and you had that conversation about when to take the keys away, when they shouldn't live alone, and things of that nature. How can you translate it to the time when you get to that point, and you do have to, follow through with what you all agreed on as a family? That's the first thing. And second, as it relates to the driving, I try to relate to people now, especially seniors, when I talk to them, that driving when they got their license is different than driving now. And I remind them how many drivers are on the road that really aren't paying attention, and how unsafe it is for a driver, even at their peak of reflexes and everything else. And while I know reason doesn't always work with someone that has advancing dementia, I think we can work that in. So how do you address when you've had the discussion with your family, that's the first part of my questions.
Well, Mark, I love that comment though about talking about how others are not, driving safely, texting and driving, that's a big one. Not
putting
for,
on makeup, eye makeup, watching television on their
lunch
phone while they're driving.
I've been eating my lunch and had some close calls, so yeah, that's a great way though of putting on to somebody else, look, this is a different environment from the 1950s or whenever you got your license. And sometimes I've heard seniors, this was pre-pandemic now, because we all drove, say, to the senior center to hear my education program. And I remember one woman talking about how she couldn't buy a new car now. So this was like 2019. She couldn't buy a new car because she was afraid she wouldn't know how to operate it because of the push button ignition, push button, shifting and stuff. And she's right. That does take a lot to get used to. And I was really struck by that. And so she needed a new car and she bought a new used car, a couple of years old that didn't have all the new stuff and maybe not a backup camera, or maybe it still did or whatever. But so those were things she knew were going to be too much for her. And so I love that point. I've got to incorporate that. But I think the first part about, hey, trying to remind somebody who has a disease that affects their short-term memory of a conversation and agreements that we made 2 years ago or 5 years ago as a family is going to be very difficult. And so it really depends on, as you know, everybody here has a lot of experience in this type of thing, but what's the best way to approach me? I'm the one that you've got to remind. Do I have a good sense of humor? Shall we do it a little bit lighthearted? Is it more appropriate for us to just hand you over a document that you signed that said you would stop driving at a certain point, or whatever? And how we do it is just, it's so important. Like I talked about my friend who went to talk to her parents about selling their house and moving to an assisted living community. How you do it, in person, over the phone, what's the best way? Sometimes this is kind of like using Mark's advice a little bit, but how can we benefit others? So, you're at a point where you probably should stop driving. That's going to benefit people because we know your reflexes might be a little slower and it's a little more dangerous out there. So we won't hurt anybody and you won't get hurt. But hey, do you have a grandchild who is 17 and who could use a hand-me-down car? Well, let's see, is that appropriate, or would that make me mad to give my car to my grandchild? Because I've heard stories either way. Sometimes it works well, and yes, that's a great idea, and I'll ask them for a ride, to give me a ride, in the car I gave them, if I need to go someplace, and hopefully the grandchild will cooperate. But I've heard stories the other way too, where, there's a family that were keeping the car, took the keys away from mom, said, you're not driving anymore. Mom lived with them in the family home with her son and his family. And they had like a 15-year-old, and they said, well, we're going to keep your car, Mom, in the driveway until our 15-year-old, gets their license in a year or two or whatever. Well, it turns out the whole time everybody would go to school and work, and Mom would get out her spare set of keys that she didn't tell anybody about, and she was driving the car. Yeah, and the way the family found out is that she's a great senior center participant, and she'd have minor accidents in the parking lot of the senior center. And of course, the senior center personnel were like, she can't be driving anymore. And the son said, she's not driving anymore. They're like, she's driving, so whatever. Anyway, so yeah, there's it depends on the family and the person, I guess. But I like that idea of trying to benefit somebody else. Can we give this car to even somebody who needs it, a single mom or, something like that. One of these organizations that, turns a car over that way with a donation.
Yeah. Sheila, I have a client. It just made me think I have a client, and he has failed the MVA driving test twice. And he keeps paying. He said it was $400. I'm not sure, but it is pricey. And he keeps saying that, he's going to take it again because he's just that, I don't want to use the word stubborn, but
yeah.
Yeah, and he's moderate now. He's not mild anymore.
That's a great, I don't know the answer to this, but when is enough for the MVA? I would think failing once is plenty. And I've heard of people who actually fail the vision test too. They don't even have to take, they feel that they fail the vision. But that's interesting that the MBA would continue. That's a horror story because I haven't heard that yet. I don't want to tell families that. Oh yeah, then the MBA will just keep taking their money and let them keep, failing a test. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
That person, maybe that family, as I was saying, I had a care consultation with a husband and wife yesterday. Maybe it's a great example of, okay, so the MVA, we don't understand why they keep giving dad, more opportunities. Maybe call the Alzheimer's Association, ask for a care consultation, and have it would have to be virtual sit down to say, Dad, you have failed twice. That's two too many. Let's come up with a plan now. What are our alternatives to transportation for you? And then, try to say, as we saw in the video in my program, that we have to stop driving now, but what's the positive? How are we still going to give you transportation? How are you still going to be able to do what you want to do? And focus on that maybe. Oh, that's a doozy.
It is. Lots of redirecting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we have lots and lots of stories. But you know what, that's how we learn, because sharing stories, we're hearing what other people are going through, and then we realize we're not alone. We're all in this together. And it's so important to know that there are resources like the Alzheimer's Association.
Seems like a lot.
And that we can call you and like you said, set up consultations, because you don't know what you don't know.
So true.
Yeah. And again, so honored that you could join us again, Sheila. Even though I've been in this field for 16 years, I learned great tips from you, and things are constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been so beneficial for me, and I know it's been beneficial for others. And just thank you for all the work that the Alzheimer's Association does. And I want to remind everyone that the walk is coming up in October. And if you haven't formed your team yet, it's not too late. Usually I invite someone like Faith or someone from the walk team or the fundraising team to come and talk. But do you have any ideas or tips about forming a team, Sheila?
Well, Connie, so thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I would love to talk about the walk. So our Montgomery County, we don't have our own walk. We are part of the Washington, D.C. walk for the Alzheimer's Association. So believe it or not, we have like 9 walks that we do during walk season. The first one is going to be this weekend in Solomon's Island, Maryland. So yeah, the Southern Maryland walk. But anyway, so this is our prime fundraiser. And as Connie said, if you can love to form a team, please do. And the best way to do it is just go to alz.org. As soon as you do, that's the first thing that's going to hit you over the head is form a walk team. And if you're not interested in that and you're looking for something specifically educational, you're going to have to X out of that first. So the walk team is very easy to get to. It walks you through it. It asks for your zip code first to just find which walk is appropriate for you, or you could pick it if you wanted. So for instance, I think the second one, so the first one is Solomon's Island this weekend. Next weekend is National Harbor. It's the Prince George's County walk, and that's at National Harbor, which is I'll be at this year. I've wanted to go to for the last 2 years. So anyway, so they're all good. They're in great spots. They're a lot of fun. We're still, doing a lot of social distancing. Of course, it's outdoors, so you can still wear a mask, but you can still hopefully be safe by being far away from people you don't know, and just maybe walking with people that you normally associate with, or walk with a mask on. So, but if you want to form a team, you're more than welcome to. If you are having any trouble doing that, the website does it for you basically. But you don't need a team. You can just do you and do whatever fundraising you want to do or donation you'd like to do, and then be a walker that way. And also, if it's something that, the walk for Washington, D.C., our walk will be October 9th, and it will be down in Washington in the mall. It'll be smaller and less people than it's been in past years, and we won't have big programs. We decided that we will have a less than 5-minute program, where normally it's like an hour program with people up at the stage and everything and getting really, kind of fired up. None of that. It's just a straight, let's go and get this done kind of thing. But if that's all too much, we always invite either individuals or communities or groups to do their own walk as a team. You could do it that day even, and you don't have to go down to DC. Last year, we just walked in our neighborhoods, and some people are still going to do that. I have a lot of communities, like assisted living communities and different, in a nursing home in our county, that they do their own thing. They either do, they do things like a wheelchair walk. So it's just around their parking lot, on a nice day, they take everybody out and do it as a fundraiser. Or even another community does artwork. Their residents do artwork, and they sell it. They sell their artwork, and they give us the proceeds. So that's a nice one to go to a little art show and then buy the artwork by residents is a lot of fun. So there's a lot of ways you can fundraise and donate for us, and we appreciate all of it.
Thank you so much. October the 9th, second Saturday in October. Like Sheila said, you don't have to go all the way to the mall in DC. Although it is fun.
It is.
It is. It's a lot of fun. And like you said, getting energized, and then the dancing. The dancing at the end, it's just great to bring the community together. But like you said, we can do it in our neighborhoods, so don't forget to join us next month, October the 6th, first Wednesday of the month. It will be our final education series with Sheila, and it is understanding and responding to dementia related behaviors. Thank you, Sheila and the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you, Margie and the Rockville Chamber, and everyone who joined us. Right at Home, Assisting Hands, Lynn's House Assisted Living, Comfort Care, and you guys have a great month, and I will see you October the 6th, right here, same time.
Thank you, everyone.